Love is supposed to feel natural, but throughout history, some people figured out how to manufacture it. Not with honesty, not with vulnerability, but with manipulation so effective it still works today. These methods come from The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene, the same author who wrote The 48 Laws of Power, and while the book presents them as tools, I'm calling them what they really are: psychological traps. Today, I'm breaking down 3 of the most toxic seduction methods ever used, backed by real historical stories, methods that still quietly destroy relationships today. This is not a tutorial, this is a warning. Let's start with the first one. One of the most powerful ways to make someone desire you is to convince them they can't have you. This method works by exploiting a simple psychological flaw. People crave what feels just out of reach. You show interest just long enough to ignite desire, then you introduce a barrier. Suddenly, attraction turns into obsession. This tactic was perfected by one of history's most infamous seducers, Don Juan. Don Juan didn't seduce women by chasing them. He seduced them by leaving. One of his victims was a poor orphan girl named Chrysetta. He gained her sympathy, promised romance, slept with her, and disappeared. Years later, Don Juan saw an elegant, wealthy woman in a park. She had status. She had confidence. She had a child. She looked exactly like Chrysetta. He later learned that she had married a rich man named Martinez. She was forbidden now. And that's when Don Juan fell apart. He started visiting the park daily. He lost sleep. He fantasized about eliminating her husband. The woman who once begged for his attention now rejected him completely. And that rejection made her irresistible. Eventually, Don Juan tried to leave town and sent her a farewell letter. Only then did she respond. She said she still had feelings, but if he wanted her, he'd have to come take her in broad daylight. When he arrived, the illusion shattered. She wasn't rich. The child wasn't his. The entire story was a performance. Chrysetta had learned his game and reversed it. She knew the only version of her Don Juan wanted was the version he couldn't have. Even after discovering the lie, he still begged her to marry him. She refused, because she understood something Don Juan never did. Once the barrier disappears, so does the desire. This method always follows the same pattern. First, you stimulate desire. Then, you withdraw access. You introduce rules, distance, morality, status, marriage, culture, anything that says you can't. The book even states, people are perversely excited by what they should not have. But here's the truth no seduction manual tells you. This method doesn't create love. It creates addiction. And once the challenge ends, the attachment collapses. The strongest people aren't strong on their own. They're strong because of their support systems, friends, family, routines, identity. So one of the most dangerous seduction tactics ever created isn't about attraction. It's about removal. Remove their anchors and they cling to you. This method was used as a literal weapon in ancient China. King Gujin was once humiliated and enslaved by his enemy, King Fukai. Instead of killing him, Fukai spared him and demanded yearly tribute. One year, Gujin sent 2 women instead of gold. One of them was named Zaishai, trained for years in seduction, charm, intellect, and emotional manipulation. Fukai became obsessed. She followed him everywhere. She cried when ignored. She praised him while quietly undermining his advisors. She convinced him he didn't need his ministers, that his judgment alone was superior. Slowly, Fukai stopped attending councils. He stopped listening to warnings. He isolated himself emotionally and politically. Every time he left her side, she punished him with coldness or tears. So, he built her a palace, then another. By the time he realized the treasury was empty, it was too late. Gujin returned with an army, and Fukai, stripped of allies, wisdom, and power, took his own life. The book explains this tactic clearly. People appear strong because they're surrounded by familiar structures. Remove those structures, and they regress into dependency. This still happens today. People enter relationships and slowly abandon friends. They stop hobbies. They stop routines. Their entire emotional supply comes from one person. And here's the psychological paradox. The person with all the power doesn't want it. Dependence kills attraction. Healthy desire comes from 2 complete individuals choosing each other, not one person becoming another's entire identity. Isolation doesn't create love, it creates control. And control always rots the relationship from the inside. You don't need beauty, charisma, or status to be attractive. You just need to look like other people want you. This is called social proof, and it's one of the most powerful illusions in human psychology. A full restaurant always feels better than an empty one, even if the food is the same. This tactic destroyed some of the greatest minds in history. The philosopher Paul Ricoeur fell deeply in love with a brilliant Russian woman named Lou Andrea Salome. She was intelligent, articulate, and emotionally elusive. She asked Paul to introduce her to his friend, Friedrich Nietzsche. Paul agreed and immediately regretted it. Nietzsche and Lou bonded instantly. Paul became invisible. What formed was a love triangle, not because Lou loved both men, but because competition inflated her value. When she later lived with Paul, she surrounded herself with admirers. Paul constantly felt replaceable. Eventually, he collapsed emotionally and ended his own life. The pattern didn't stop there. Years later, Lou captivated Sigmund Freud. When Freud noticed a younger student becoming interested in her, he felt jealousy, even paternal resentment. Nothing had changed about Lou. What changed was perception. People wanted her because others wanted her. The book makes this clearer. Desire is contagious. Celebrities benefit from this constantly. Influencers benefit from this digitally. Even follower counts subtly alter attraction. People fear that being surrounded by admirers makes someone unattractive. It doesn't. It signals value. But here's the danger. This method doesn't make you loved. It makes you competed for. And competition breeds anxiety, not safety. People don't fall in love with who you are. They fall in love with who they think you're worth. Once the crowd disappears, so does the illusion. Seduction techniques work not because they're true, but because they exploit human weakness. Real connection doesn't need barriers, isolation, or competition. And if attraction only exists when someone feels insecure, challenged, or afraid of loss, it was never love to begin with.